not something that I had originally thought about. So in how TodaQ and all these solutions have grown is because we constantly went to the real economy side of the market, business owners, etc., who kept hitting us and saying, we don't like this, we like that, that's valuable, can you do this, right? And I do believe, it doesn't matter how smart you are, the market's smarter than you. When I was in the Army, there was a saying, the map is right, the compass is right, you are wrong. And my business version of that is the market is smarter than me, at least. So I just listened to it and let it tell me what to do. So what happened is, once we produced that, everyone showed up from the pharma and agriculture and clean tech side of things, every industry, and they said, wait, a file can be anything. And we're like, yeah. And you can fractionate, you can do that. Yep. And you can do it efficiently with immutable trust and security. Yep. So they brought their engineers and dug in to confirm, is this legit? Right. And they said, well, we can do all of our supply chains, all of our goods, the food, the seed to sale, the drugs that are produced in the factories and go elsewhere. Every single resource, commodity, and good on Earth that starts flying around the world can be put on that. We understand that you are first solving the change issue, but this is actually something else. And I thought about it and said, yeah, we can do that. And that is why you care on the fractionation of files or packets or things like that. And then the final one is the word atomic swap has been used in the blockchain world quite a bit, and typically means you are moving assets from one blockchain system to another, right? And Toda is different. It's kind of like providing the road, right? It's not like a blockchain, it's just a car that you put on top. So what does an atomic swap transaction mean in Toda? One of the biggest problems in trade is what I call show me the goods, show me the money. Has anyone seen the movies where it's midnight, two cars pull up on the bridge and they shine lights and people with guns get out and they open up the two trunks and they can look at the goods and they can look at the money, and there's all of this friction and risk and just waste involved in getting that transaction to happen. Well, it turns out that that doesn't just exist in Hollywood and Bollywood. That is what makes most of the banking and insurance system necessary. Is show me the goods, show me the money. Because in a transaction, most transactions are two ways, right? So in this particular case, let's look at a two-way Toda transaction. I want to buy a car, and I've got money, right? So here's the buyer with a phone who has files for a car, and here's the seller who has the ownership and registration file of the car. And we want to do this transaction. Normally we would be worried because there's so many possibilities. I'd be worried, am I going to get the car, am I getting it on time, am I going to get a different car, and the other person's, am I going to get some of the money, am I going to get all of it, is it going to arrive on time, am I going to get none of it. And by the time you work it out, there's an almost infinite number of possibilities as to how this whole thing could shake out. So because of that, you end up with trade finance, escrow services, reconciliation services, insurance, all kinds of things to reduce the counterparty risk on both sides so that trade can happen. And all of that is a cost and inefficiency. So this is an example. You want to wire money from one country to another and you're saying, why am I paying $20 or $50 and waiting 3 days? A portion of it is due to that. Another portion is that everyone likes holding float so that they can earn interest on it. So they'll hold it longer so they can make a profit. That's a separate thing. What if the two-way transaction could just become one? And there's only two outcomes. Either I keep all the money and the seller keeps all of the car and that file, or the seller gets all the money that was proposed and I get all of the ownership of the car. And there's no other possibilities. And that is actually what can be done in Toda, which we're building into that Toda as a service platform. The implications of that are actually enormous because it means that you just rip out a whole ton of costs and waste and intermediaries for real. So what's happened now in the Toda as a service platform is the first pieces of those three things have been put in, and over this year we're just continuing to add the next and take it to market. And where is that market? We're doing a sharing economy contract in Korea. Let's just go to the next one. This is cool. You're actually seeing the complex. We're kind of wandering around. Imagine you've got thousands of residents at a time, complexes of buildings with integrated services and surrounding merchants. We're going and sticking all of that onto TodaQ's Toda as a service platform. So all the people, all the money transaction, all the services, and just do it blocks of thousands of residents at a time. And the nice part about that is that underlying total there means that in order to get it going, nobody really notices on day one that the world has changed, because they're still using all the same front-end things. Let's go to the next. So this is what I was talking about yesterday. So what do we have going on here? So you have a drug factory, right? And let's say you get a bunch of pills that are produced. So now I've got Toda files, each one carrying its own ledger. And the Toda file is produced saying, I'm XYZ drug, here's all the characteristics, everything that happened, and there's 10 million of me, and I'm owned by a factory. So in this particular case, we've got two companies. One is Shalia Healthcare Global. They make generic drugs in India and pump it out into 2,000 African nations in order to provide affordable healthcare. So what ends up happening is that those drugs are going to go across the ocean and end up in 2,000 or more distribution centers in all the different markets. So that file that says I'm a million drugs fractions, just like that change. And when the transaction then occurs and you push the drugs one way and the payment the other way, you don't have any of that other waste or risk as well. And as it keeps going, then it continues to fractionate and it ends up in a bunch of hospitals and pharmacies. And then the patient or customer shows up on their phone with their prescription record. Now the interesting part about that is for TodaQ, we're all about providing the platform and making finance happen. And prescription records and identity and patient records, that's complicated. Tons of regulation, lots of risk, there's very specific workflows around the whole thing. And we don't have the expertise, nor do we want to get into that. We need partners. So there is a Toda.Network company, which is looking at doing the records, and we're actually taking them to market. So with all of these companies where there's those kind of issues, we're working with them and they're handling that particular piece of the problem. And you'll recall that yesterday I actually talked through that so that what you end up with on the patient's phone is on that prescription record file, it then says, great, I got 10 pills and you know exactly where it came from on the factory. However, like I said again, TodaQ doesn't do everything. We're very, very specific in terms of what we provide and who are our customers. When that patient walks out with the prescription record, what's going to happen is the health clinics, the doctors, all of those need access to services and other things that then allow them to interact with that digital asset, which TodaQ isn't necessarily going to build. And this is where the growth of partners and other companies and communities come in. So, so out of the corporate challenges that were provided, here's the first one. So the first one is actually dealing with a supply chain and distribution chain problem. So what we got here is, and this was actually showing kind of it, is you have a distribution center and someone's there and they deal with paper stuff and it's all pretty basic, right? And you can leapfrog and get them to this, but on day one, how do you do something that simple if they're kind of 3 steps back? Well, what if you had an app that could just take a picture, right? Automatically insert a bunch of detail around it and have that person do a couple of selections and boom, now you have that record there that is right on the Toda protocol as part of that whole distribution line. Now, for those third-party distribution supply chain parties, that again, some of it is what we deal with, but a bunch of it is not. So we'd like to have other groups that are creating solutions that will allow for SMEs, supply chain companies, and others to be able to do that. And the actual functional act of saying, I can take a photo of a physical object or a paper file and convert it onto the Toda protocol has multiple more applications than just what I'm describing. And that's what challenge 1 is about. Because we need that as we're going out. So we'd like to see what kind of solutions the global community can come up with and then put them into action. Let's go to the next one. And then on the pharmaceutical side, like I mentioned yesterday, in order to have a doctor or a health clinic or whoever else be able to review and verify and look at a Toda file, in this case the prescription record, and then append their own notes or treatment onto it. That again, in our specific immediate case, is something that we want and need, but it has multiple applications elsewhere. And that's why there are these 2 corporate challenges. For TodaQ, for the dozens or so contracts that we're launching over 2019, there's an immediate need where we need to bring other solutions along with us to market, but we picked 2 simple functional use cases where you can take it 20 other ways apart from just what we're talking about. So where do you start? So on the TodaQ site, which right now is TodaQfinance.com, we just had a landing page for months and months and months. And the main site is coming out 2nd week of February. It's a massive revamp. But what we've put on to start is a few things that are linked. There's a whole very accessible and I think kind of awesome primer on the Toda technology that was produced by Adam and the engineering team. A bit of a comparison chart that sort of lines Toda up against other things and says why should you care. The documentation on the Toda as a Service API to dig into in order to see that content, as well as the portal in order to have access. And you can go up to the Toda.Network desk and get API keys, which gets you started, and then there's the work session at 2 p.m. And that's just kind of showing a shot of the TodaQ API documentation. So yeah, work through things very, very quickly. There's probably questions. Happy to entertain any now, or come find me later. Thank you so much. Yeah. Got it. Okay. And by the way, it is these challenges are also on the Slack channel. You can join it there. Or if you just like that whole challenge pack, email it to you, find any of the Toda team. Sasha can help you out, I can, Chantal can. There's Sasha, he's way back. Yes?
Is it possible actually to have a small bundle of the TodaQ API that can be implemented in a weekend kind of hackathon like this, or is it really more of an investment for a longer term project where I can look at this?
Great question. The answer is yes to both. So what we ended up doing is for those 2 challenges, the challenge was bounded in a way we're given the requirements of what needed to be built, and some of the guidance and other things along, so that something could be produced. And then the answer to the second question is also yes. Cool. Any other questions? Okay, John, thank you.